With the European Parliament elections behind us, now we are looking at some of the top positions waiting to be filled. Now, what was supposed to be a very predictable position seems to come across a hurdle.
Now, joining us to discuss the implications of this is Jowanka Jakubek-Lalik, Associate Professor from the Faculty of Law and Administration at the University of Warsaw. Hello, Madam, and welcome to TVP World.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
So now I wanted to ask you about the outcome of recent European Parliament elections that had led to a new balance of power among member states and political groups. And I feel like this new configuration will influence the selection of EU leaders as political alliances and national interests come into play. So if you could help us now, let's say, unpack the situation. What are the key factors influencing the selection of top EU officials?
Definitely, there are several factors that are needed to be taken into consideration. So first of all, we have the, let's say, political group factor. So the EPP, Liberals, Socialists, and also the more far-right parties that also quite substantively also increased their presence in the European Union. So between them, this top position should be basically divided. But also we have the geographical factor, let's say. So the top EU jobs should be filled in with candidates coming from different parts of European Union, not from just, for example, Western or Eastern Europe. So these factors should be combined in order to achieve the consensus between the top politicians.
Right, and speaking of achieving a consensus, we saw like a lot of gridlocking when it comes to actually choosing these politicians for the top position. And there's reportedly some tensions between Germany and even Poland's Donald Tusk when they are putting the blame on Giorgia Meloni for stalling this thing from going through. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, I think that Ursula von der Leyen's position as a top EU representative is not under big threat. So I think that here there is a political consensus that she should continue her job for the second term. However, indeed, there are some tensions behind the scenes, and definitely we can see that the far-right parties are dissatisfied with what is happening, because currently what we can see is that the top jobs are divided between the EPP with some inclusion of socialists and liberals, let's say, preferences. However, the right-wing parties are dissatisfied, and also I could see Viktor Orban's comments that they are counting on bigger inclusion in the leading posts of the EU, and they are not receiving that. And Giorgia Meloni, as, let's say, the most prominent politician currently in the EU, who is from this right-wing parties, she is also fighting for the best position of her in the European Union top jobs. And also I can see that there are some, let's say, inspirations to find different alternatives to the proposed consensus.
Now, we mentioned earlier Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and now, according to the reports, he was one of the key negotiators there. So, judging on what he was saying, how does Poland's influence now within the EU compare to other member states now in the context of a new balance of power, to your mind?
Donald Tusk, for sure, is a very important player, and he's the top negotiator on the side of EPP, for sure. And we can see that his experience from the two terms as the leader of the European Council is definitely paying off. He has a lot of contacts. He's very well recognized and respected in the European Union circles, which means that for sure the position of Poland, having Donald Tusk as the new prime minister, has increased very much in the circles of the European Union. On the other hand, also we need to see what kind of Polish names are also part of the game of the negotiation process in the European Union. So Radoslaw Sikorski, for sure, is coming as the, let's say, top person who is addressed in the new job opportunities. However, I'm not sure to what extent he will be in the end interested, even if he was seriously being proposed this new job of the European Union Commissioner for Defense. I'm not sure to what extent he will be interested, as the competences of this commissioner will be for sure quite limited.
All right, and speaking of the Polish perspective, we've talked to various guests when it comes to be it NATO, be it European Union. A lot of comment we're talking about the center of gravity gradually shifting to the eastern flank. Do you think that will kind of give the European Union a hint to give more important voice to the Central Eastern European region, and especially to politicians like Radoslaw Sikorski?
Well, Poland for sure is an increasingly important player in the European Union. I think also the result of the European Parliament election show that the, let's say, liberal forces in Poland, pro-democratic forces, are still very strong, whereas in Western European countries like France or Germany, the far-right parties have gained much more support from the voters. Also, Poland is a frontline country, yes, so this is the biggest contributor in the Central and Eastern European part to the war efforts in Ukraine. And also, I think that especially with the politicians that are currently in the government, the position of Poland might be very, very big and important.
And now, following your thought, to your mind, what are the potential challenges and obstacles for Polish candidates in this election process as such?
Well, when it comes to potential candidates, I think that still Radoslaw Sikorski is the kind of number one person. However, I think that he would be much more interested in the position of the Foreign Policy Commissioner, which is the High Representative of the EU in foreign relations. If the decision will be taken that the mandate will be separated between foreign policy and defense, and there will be a new post for Defense Commissioner, I'm not sure to what extent, as I already mentioned, because of the limitation in the competences, he will be interested in having this position. I mean, Radoslaw Sikorski, he's a heavyweight politician, and his political temper means that he would be more interested in having a job which would mean a real influence, not solely the coordination between the efforts of the member states. So here, maybe it would be the Finnish foreign minister who would be more suitable for this kind of institutional setting of the new Commissioner for Defense. But I still think that the ball is in the game, and we will see what will come out of it. I don't think that the consensus is already closed. There are still a lot of debates, and we need to pay attention what will happen next.
All right, and she mentioned the challenges of Poland. I would like to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Like you mentioned, we're seeing a lot of right-wing on the rise in countries like France, Germany. We've recently talked to guests saying that France is seeing a very divided, polarizing kind of trend when it comes to its internal politics. How is it all going to come together and impact the direction of the European Union going forward? Is that going to pose a significant challenge now with the various different sort of politics cropping up?
Well, definitely the position of France was to a large extent increasing in recent months. We could see that President Emmanuel Macron, he was definitely more and more important player, especially in relation between France and Germany. So for sure, he was kind of becoming leader of the European Union. However, his, let's say, leadership mandate has been challenged by the outcome of the European Parliament results in France. And the decision that he took to call the early elections, I think it's a risky one. However, it might turn out for good for him, because in the French presidential, in the French political system, president has a lot of power, and if he would like to make the life of the prime minister miserable, he has definitely many instruments to do that. So even if the far-right parties would succeed in winning the elections in France, however, I doubt that. I think that the reason that he called for the new elections is also to show the French voters that there is a clear choice that they need to make, if to support the democratic, let's say, liberal forces or the far-right forces. So I think that the electorate might be very much mobilized in favor of voting for the liberal pro-democratic forces. So here I think that he might appear as the actually winning side of this situation.
And now, in a grand scheme of things, zooming out even further, now, how might the selection of EU leaders, to your mind, impact the Union's policy priorities and strategic directions going forward?
Well, for sure, we will need to see what kind of balance of power will appear after the top jobs will be filled. Let's not forget also that apart from the, let's say, 4 most important jobs that we often mention, so the President of the Commission, the President of the European Parliament, the President of the European Council, and the High Representative, which is like the Foreign Minister of the EU, we also have this kind of blue ribbon jobs, yes? So, for example, Trade Commissioner, Competition Commissioner, Internal Market Commissioner. Those positions are very important when it comes to competences and also the ability to influence the decision-making in the European Union. They can impose large fines. They can also negotiate deals in the name of the European Union. So also we need to look who is going to be nominated for those jobs and what will be exactly the balance of power in the European Commission after the negotiation process and the approval of the European Parliament will be finalized.
Right, like I mentioned, the balancing of power and the structure going forward is going to be something that's very important. And of course, we're already seeing a little bit of a rift when it comes to the discussion on the table. Do you think the issue of cohesion is going to be an issue going forward, the integration of these different political ideologies kind of cropping up? Are they going to be able to integrate and eventually come to a consensus?
Definitely there is an issue of cohesion, and we can see that very clearly with the outcomes of the European Parliament elections. So first of all, we have this division between the countries which are more in favor of deepening the European integration and the ones that would prefer to stay behind. So we can think to what extent there will be this Europe of different speeds concept. For sure, Hungary is leading the bloc of the dissatisfied political forces in Europe together to a certain extent with Italy led by Giorgia Meloni. However, again, here Giorgia Meloni seems to me like the politician who is trying to make the most out of her position, which means also that she's much more open for negotiations and for compromise. And also her position towards the Russian aggression in Ukraine is totally different than Hungarian, which means that also in the far right camp, let's say, we have a lot of divisions and there are a lot of, let's say, internal pressures between different politicians who aspire to be leading this group, but we can see that for sure we don't have just one leader who is going to gather the support from different countries, and here the cohesion again is, let's say, with a question mark.
And indeed, because of that, we do see that there is also a tectonic shift within the European Union and strong leadership coming from now multiple countries. Jowanka Jakubek-Lalik, thank you so much for joining us and providing your expert insights.
My pleasure. Thank you.